Sometimes the quietest smiles hold the loudest secrets, and in the dark, she knew exactly what was about to change everything. The evening was painted in muted shades of amber and deep blue, the kind of twilight where the world feels paused, like time itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. I found myself in a small, almost hidden cafe, the kind of place that didn't scream for attention but invited you to settle into its calm embrace. The air was thick with the scent of old wood, faint hints of vanilla from a nearby candle, and the gentle murmur of quiet conversations. It was the perfect kind of stillness, the kind that invites reflection and maybe, just maybe, unexpected encounters. She was there before I noticed her. A figure seated near the far corner where the light softened into shadows, the kind of dim that cloaked imperfections but revealed the truth in eyes. Her presence was unassuming but magnetic, the kind that makes you look without wanting to be obvious. Her hair caught the low light just enough to hint at soft waves, and when she smiled, it wasn't a smile aimed at the room, but one that seemed meant only for herself, as if she carried a secret the world hadn't been letting on. That smile, the way it played quietly on her lips in the dark, stirred something unexpected inside me. It was subtle, almost shy, yet brimming with confidence. It was a smile that said she knew something I didn't, something important and inevitable. The warmth it carried pulled me closer, though we were separated by the noise and space. I found my eyes drawn back to her again and again. Her posture was relaxed, but there was a quiet strength in the curve of her neck and the way her shoulders settled against the chair, like she had learned to carry herself through years of unseen storms. I could almost hear the unspoken stories etched in the lines around her eyes, the laughter and the quiet sorrows, the lessons learned and the battles won. The air between us shifted the moment our hands brushed. It was accidental, or so I told myself, but electric all the same. Her fingers were cool, delicate, and the brief contact sent a jolt through me, like a spark that ignited something tender and fragile. I didn't pull away, caught off guard by how much I wanted that moment to stretch longer. Her touch lingered, not out of boldness, but out of a shared, unspoken understanding that something was beginning to take shape here, in this quiet corner of the world. Around us, the cafe's low hum continued, the soft clink of porcelain cups, the rustle of a newspaper, the distant laughter of friends. But for me, everything else blurred into the background. The only thing that mattered was the way her eyes met mine, steady and curious, as if daring me to come closer without a word spoken. There was a calmness in her that felt like shelter, like a harbor after a storm. I wanted to cross the distance between us, to see if the smile was an invitation or just a beautiful enigma I wasn't meant to solve yet. But I held back, savoring the moment suspended in darkness, the delicate beginning of something I couldn't yet name, but already felt growing inside. She smiled again, just a little, as if she knew exactly what was coming. And in that smile, I found the quiet promise of a story waiting to unfold. The soft glow of the candle flickered between us, casting a gentle dance of shadows on the table. It was as if the light itself conspired to make this moment feel sacred, a quiet bubble where the outside world faded into insignificance. Her presence felt even closer now, not just a distant figure in the dark, but a living warmth beside me. Our conversation began with the simplest of words, polite, almost cautious, like two travelers testing a path before deciding whether to journey together. She spoke with a voice low and smooth, the kind of voice that wrapped around you like a favorite melody you didn't realize you missed until it played again. There was a softness to it, yet beneath that softness was an undeniable strength. I listened intently, drawn not just to her words, but to the pauses between them, the way she measured each thought carefully, revealing only what she chose to share. Her laugh came quietly, a delicate sound that felt like a secret between us. It wasn't loud or boisterous, but a gentle release, a moment of ease that seemed to dissolve some of the invisible barriers between us. Watching her relax into the conversation, I saw the subtle changes in her expression, the slight upturn of her eyes, the way her lips curved naturally, and the faint warmth that spread across her cheeks. It was a beautiful thing, seeing someone so poised allow themselves to simply be. I noticed the way her hand moved when she spoke, sometimes resting lightly on the table, other times gesturing softly to emphasize a point. When she touched my forearm, it was intentional but tender, a brush that sent a ripple of warmth through my skin. That touch lingered just a moment longer than necessary, enough to stir something deep inside me, without rushing the moment. It was a language all its own, spoken not in words but in feeling. The scent of her perfume was subtle but distinct, something floral, with hints of. She listened with an attentive quietness, her eyes never leaving mine, reflecting a kind of empathy that was rare and precious. The space between us felt charged, yet safe, like the calm before a storm that promised change rather than destruction. Her smile returned several times, softer now, more genuine, as if she was beginning to trust this connection as much as I was. The dim light highlighted the graceful lines of her face, the gentle arch of her eyebrows, the way her lashes cast delicate shadows on her cheeks. For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only her voice, the softness of her touch, the quiet intensity of two souls cautiously reaching toward something new. It was a delicate beginning, one that promised more if we dared to follow its fragile path. And so, in the gentle hush of that candlelit space, our story began to weave itself quietly, one whispered word and subtle touch at a time. The evening had settled into a comfortable silence between us, not the kind that felt awkward, but the kind that spoke of growing trust. It was in this quiet that our conversations began to peel back the layers we'd both kept carefully guarded. Her eyes, steady and thoughtful, invited me to look deeper, not just at her but at myself. I felt the weight of years behind her gaze, the kind of wisdom earned through experience rather than time alone. She spoke softly of moments long past, memories woven with both joy and regret. There was no bitterness in her voice, only a gentle acceptance of the things life had handed her. Her stories weren't loud or dramatic, but painted in shades of subtlety, like brushstrokes on a canvas that revealed more the longer you looked. The way she described the small details, the scent of rain on old streets, the taste of a favorite wine shared with a lost friend, made her past feel alive and tangible. As she spoke, I caught myself watching the way her fingers traced invisible patterns on the table, the slight tremor when she mentioned a particularly painful memory. There was grace in her vulnerability, a quiet strength in admitting the parts of herself that remained fragile. I realized that beneath her poised exterior was a woman who had known both the beauty and the ache of life. I found myself opening up too, though the stories I shared were less weighted, but no less real. I told her about my hopes and uncertainties, the restless yearning that comes with youth, dreams still unformed, but burning brightly beneath the surface. The contrast between our worlds was undeniable, yet in that contrast, there was something profound. Her seasoned perspective gave shape to my scattered thoughts, while my fresh hopes seemed to kindle a spark in her eyes. The air between us shifted, filled with unspoken understanding. The crackle of a fireplace nearby added a comforting rhythm to the moment, its warmth wrapping around us like a soft shawl. I noticed how she adjusted the scarf draped over her shoulders, her fingers brushing against the fabric in a tender, almost absent-minded gesture. Then, almost instinctively, she reached out to adjust the collar of my jacket, her touch light and careful, like a silent promise of care. That small contact lingered longer than necessary, and I felt an unexpected warmth spread through me, something beyond the physical. It was as if, in that fleeting moment, the distance between us shrank, and our worlds touched in a way words could not fully capture. Our conversation deepened without pressure, flowing naturally from memory to hope, from loss to possibility. The age difference that once felt like a barrier now seemed less important, a gentle backdrop to the connection building between us. She was no longer just a woman who smiled mysteriously in the dark. She was becoming someone I wanted to understand, to stand beside. In her presence, I felt a quiet invitation to trust, to be vulnerable, and to embrace the unexpected. The layers between us were still many, but with each shared story and gentle touch, the path forward became clearer, lit softly by the warmth of growing intimacy. The room seemed to shrink around us as the night deepened, the warm glow of the lamp casting soft halos and shadows that danced across her face. We sat closer now, though neither of us had moved intentionally. It was a quiet closeness, the kind that settles slowly, wrapping itself around your senses before you even realize it. The space between us had become something fragile and charged, a delicate thread strung tight with anticipation and unsaid words. Our eyes met and held, long and steady, as if trying to read the secrets tucked behind each other's gaze. There was a softness in her expression, a vulnerability barely contained beneath the surface of her composed exterior. And yet, in that very softness was strength, the kind that comes from knowing yourself well enough to hold back, even when your heart pushes forward. I could feel the warmth radiating from her hand, resting near mine on the table. The small but undeniable, her hair fell in gentle waves, a few strands escaping to brush near her cheek, so close that I imagined the softness of each touch if I reached out. The faint scent of lavender clung to her, calming and intoxicating. For a moment, the world around us ceased to exist. There was only her, only this suspended moment hanging between dusk and dawn. Then, almost instinctively, that hesitation wasn't just mine. I sensed it in her too, the way her fingers lingered just long enough before retreating, the soft sigh she barely let slip. It was a dance we both knew, how to be close without rushing, how to let desire simmer beneath a layer of restraint. In that suspended silence, there was a promise of something unfolding slowly, tenderly, like the first light of dawn creeping over the horizon. The soft glow of streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement, flickering like doubts in my mind. I couldn't shake the image of her, the way she smiled in the dark, as if she knew exactly what was coming. That smile haunted me, comforting and unsettling all at once. But beneath the warmth it sparked inside me was a storm of uncertainty, a quiet voice whispering caution. Could I really cross the line between admiration and something more? Was I ready for what that might mean? The truth was, the age between us wasn't just a number. It carried weight, expectations, judgments, and the invisible walls built by society. I could almost hear the murmurs of disapproval before they even spoke. Those small gestures were anchors in a sea of doubt. Yet, even as they comforted me, they also deepened the conflict. Was this feeling a foolish hope, or was something real enough to risk everything for? My fingers brushed against my own wrist, remembering the warmth of her touch, the way it had grounded me, made me feel seen. It was such a simple contact, but it carried a weight that words couldn't capture. I longed to reach for that feeling again, to step into the vulnerability it demanded. But the fear was louder. What if I was wrong? What if this connection was just a fleeting moment, a beautiful illusion destined to fade with the dawn? The thought tightened my chest like a storm gathering on the horizon. And yet, beneath all the questions, there was a quiet truth I couldn't deny. The hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something rare. A connection that didn't fit neatly into expectations, but was real in its tenderness and depth. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill my lungs. The world felt vast and uncertain, but also filled with possibility. I reminded myself that sometimes the heart sees what the mind fears to admit, that sometimes courage means leaning into the unknown. The memory of her smile, that knowing smile in the dark, flickered like a beacon in the night. It was both a challenge and a promise, a silent invitation. The soft glow of a single lamp illuminated her face, casting gentle shadows that traced the lines of thought and emotion flickering across her features. She smiled in the dark once more, but this time it was different. A smile that carried full awareness, a knowing acceptance of what was unfolding between us. I took a breath, steadying myself. The hesitation that had held me back now felt like a weight I was ready to set down. In that intimate space, the walls I'd built around my feelings began to crumble. I spoke honestly, my voice low but clear, telling her about the mixture of hope and fear I'd been carrying. The way her presence stirred something I hadn't expected, something both thrilling and terrifying. Her eyes softened, reflecting a quiet understanding. She didn't rush to fill the silence with words, but let my confession settle between us like a delicate gift. In that moment, the distance that had lingered, the space carved by doubt and social expectation, seemed to shrink. We were no longer two cautious souls circling each other, but two people daring to be vulnerable, daring to trust. She reached out, her hand moving slowly, deliberately, to rest against my cheek. The touch was feather-light but electric, a balm to the uncertainty that had shadowed me. Her fingers traced the contours of my face with tender care, as if memorizing the shape of a new and precious connection. The warmth of her hand grounded me, a steady reminder that I was not alone in this. "I've known," she whispered, her voice barely above the breath between us. "I've known for a while what this could be." There was no hesitation in her words, only quiet conviction. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment too, waiting for the walls to fall away so we could finally meet on the other side. The darkness around us felt safe, cocooning us in a fragile intimacy. The faint scent of her perfume mingled with the cool night air seeping through a cracked window, creating an atmosphere that was both calming and intoxicating. I leaned into her touch, feeling the softness of her skin against my fingertips, the gentle rise and fall of her breath. For a long moment, we simply existed together in that space. No need for grand declarations, no rush to define what was happening. It was enough to be present, to share the quiet truth of our feelings without fear or pretense. Her smile deepened, a radiant mix of relief and hope, and I realized that this was the turning point. The moment where the slow burn of our connection ignited into something real and unshakable. We had broken through the barriers, not with force, but with honesty and tenderness. As our hands intertwined, the tension that had held us apart softened into something warm and steady. In her eyes, I saw the reflection of my own desire, not as a fleeting passion, but as a promise, a beginning forged in patience, respect, and genuine care. And in that shared silence, I knew we had stepped into a new chapter, one where the future was uncertain, but filled with the quiet joy of discovery together. The first light of dawn filtered softly through the window, spilling gentle gold across the room, where we had shared so many quiet moments. The night's tension had melted away like mist, leaving behind a calm that wrapped around us both, warm, tender, and full of promise. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, welcoming the beginning of something delicate yet deeply real. We rose slowly, the unspoken connection between us humming quietly beneath our movements. I felt her hand brush mine as we stepped outside together, fingers lightly entwining, not out of urgency, but because it felt right, a natural extension of the trust we had built. The morning air was cool and fresh, filled with the scent of dew on grass and the faint, comforting aroma of earth waking to a new day. Walking side by side, we didn't rush or speak much, but the silence between us was full of understanding. Each glance carried a warmth that words couldn't capture, soft smiles that lingered just a moment too long, the subtle squeeze of a hand that said, "I'm here." In that slow, quiet companionship, I felt the barriers of fear and doubt finally give way, replaced by a steady, unshakable presence. She looked over at me with that graceful confidence that had first drawn me in, the quiet strength beneath her gentle exterior. Her eyes shone with something new, not the knowing smile of the dark, but the hopeful light of someone ready to step forward. There was no rush, no pressure, only the promise of a journey we would take together, at a pace that honored both our hearts. The warmth of her touch remained as we strolled. The way her fingers brushed mine, a simple but profound reminder that this connection was no fleeting spark, but a steady flame growing stronger. The world around us was waking up, but in that moment, it felt like time itself had slowed just for us. I noticed the way the soft morning light played on her features, the delicate lines that spoke of life lived fully, the gentle curve of her smile, the calm radiance of someone who had chosen hope over fear. It was beautiful in its quiet honesty, and I felt grateful to be a part of it. As we walked, I realized that the age between us no longer mattered. It was a backdrop to a story far richer, one about respect, understanding, and the kind of love that grows slowly, patiently, like the dawn itself. There was no need for grand gestures or declarations. What mattered was the steady rhythm of two hearts finding their way. We paused beneath a tree touched by early sunlight, the leaves whispering softly overhead. She turned to me, her eyes holding mine with a warmth that felt like home. In that look, I found all the reassurance I needed, a quiet promise that whatever came next, we would face it together. Her hand found mine once more, fingers curling around mine like a gentle anchor. And as the sun rose higher, spilling light on the world around us, I knew this was not an ending, but a beautiful new beginning, one written in shared moments, silent understanding, and the slow, steady bloom of something true.